If you've ever tried bullet journaling, time blocking, the Pomodoro technique, and every other productivity method out there, and they all failed, this video will finally explain why. And no, it's not because you're lazy. Carl Jung discovered something about 15 to 20% of the population that explains exactly why these methods don't work for you, and modern neuroscience has now confirmed it with brain scans. If you're one of these people, and there's a very good chance you are if you're watching this, then every single piece of advice about getting organized that you've ever heard was designed for a brain that doesn't work like yours. Here's what's happening. Your brain processes information differently, not worse. Differently. Scientists call this sensory processing sensitivity. What does that mean? Your brain has more mirror neurons, a more active limbic system, and it processes everything about 3 to 5 times deeper than the average person. So, when you look at a to-do list with 10 items on it, your brain doesn't just see 10 tasks. It sees 30 to 50 micro-decisions. It feels the emotional weight of every single one. And that's why you freeze. That's why you feel exhausted before you even start. And that's why this video exists, to give you a system designed for your operating system, not someone else's. If you're someone who feels overwhelmed just by looking at your task list, if you need 3 hours of alone time to recover after 1 hour of meetings, if you walk into a room and immediately feel the tension, if you remember conversations word for word from years ago, if you have to process everything before you can make a decision, if deadlines that are weeks away already stress you out, then you're in the right place. This isn't a weakness. This isn't anxiety. This isn't overthinking. This is a documented biological trait that's been studied for 30 years. And this video will prove it to you. In the next 60 minutes, you're going to learn 3 things. First, the neuroscience of WAY. Every organization method you've tried has failed. Second, the 4-step system specifically designed for highly sensitive brains. And third, you'll get downloadable worksheets so you can implement this starting tomorrow. Let's begin with what Carl Jung discovered in the 1920s that most productivity gurus still don't understand today. Let's start by examining something that might change how you see yourself. Dr. Elaine Aron, a research psychologist, spent 30 years studying what she calls highly sensitive persons, or HSPs. Her research, backed by fMRI brain scans and published in peer-reviewed journals, confirmed what Carl Jung theorized almost a century ago. 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that processes information more deeply than everyone else. This isn't a disorder. It's not a weakness. It's a biological trait found in over 100 species, from fruit flies to primates. It's an evolutionary advantage. Brain scans show that HSPs have more activity in areas related to awareness, empathy, and processing sensory information. Specifically, you have more mirror neurons in your insular and anterior cingulate cortex. Your limbic system, the emotional center of your brain, is more reactive, and your brain takes longer to process information because it's looking for patterns, connections, and nuances that other brains simply don't register. This is why you notice things others miss, why you pick up on subtle emotional cues, why loud environments exhaust you, why you need time alone to recharge, and why this is the important part. Traditional productivity advice doesn't work for you because that advice was created by and for the 80% who don't have this trait. It's like trying to run Windows software on a Mac. The problem isn't you. The problem is you've been using the wrong operating system manual your entire life. So, what does this actually mean in numbers? If you're in a room with 10 people, 1 to 2 of them are HSPs. In the United States alone, that's 50 to 70 million people. This is not rare. This is not fringe. This is a significant portion of the population that's been told their entire lives to toughen up. Stop being so sensitive. Just push through it. But here's what the research shows. HSPs are not more emotional. They process emotions more deeply. You're not weak. Your nervous system is more responsive. You're not slow. Your brain is more thorough. And this comes with real, measurable differences in how you experience daily life. When you walk into a meeting, you don't just hear what people are saying. You notice their body language, their tone, the subtext, the group dynamics, who's uncomfortable, who's lying, who's about to explode. A typical brain processes maybe 20% of that. Your brain processes 80 to 90%. Now, imagine trying to stay productive when your brain is processing 4 times the information of everyone around you. Imagine trying to follow a time-blocking schedule when every task carries emotional weight that others don't feel. Imagine trying to just focus when your nervous system is picking up every sound, every visual change, every shift in energy in your environment. You're not failing at productivity. You're trying to use tools designed for a completely different type of brain. And that's why you're here. Now consider what your daily life actually feels like. And you tell me if this sounds familiar. Have you ever woken up in the morning, looked at your to-do list, and felt your chest tighten before you even got out of bed? Not because the tasks are hard, but because your brain has already started processing every single one of them, what could go wrong, who you might disappoint, how you need to prepare emotionally for each interaction. Your typical brain friend looks at the same list and thinks, okay, 10 things, I'll knock them out. You look at it and feel like you're staring at a mountain. Because while they see 10 separate tasks, you see the email you need to send, which requires thinking about tone so you don't sound too direct or too passive, which means you need to read it 3 times before sending, which means you need to be in the right mental state to even write it, which means you can't do it first thing because mornings are foggy, which means it needs to be afternoon, but which afternoon hour has the right energy? That's one task. You have 9 more. This isn't overthinking. This is what depth of processing actually looks like in real life. And by the time you've mentally walked through all 10 tasks, you're exhausted. You haven't done anything yet, but you're already depleted. Sound familiar? Or have you ever gone to a party or networking event, talked to people for an hour, and then needed 3 hours alone afterward to recover? And I don't mean you're introverted and you prefer alone time. I mean you physically need it, like your nervous system is screaming for quiet. Your friends think you're antisocial. You think there's something wrong with you, but here's what's actually happening. While they were having surface-level conversations, your brain was tracking facial expressions, tone of voice, subtext, power dynamics, who's comfortable, who's faking it. They processed 10 conversations. You processed 10 conversations times 5 variables each. That's 50 conversations worth of data. No wonder you're exhausted. You're not weak. You're literally processing 5 times the social information they are. And when you get home and sit in silence for 3 hours, you're not recovering from socializing. You're processing and integrating 50 data streams that your brain collected. That silence isn't avoidance. It's not antisocial behavior. It's neurological necessity. Your brain needs that time to sort through everything it absorbed. And if you don't give yourself that time, you'll feel scattered, irritable, and overwhelmed for days. Or this one. You sit down to work, and suddenly you're aware of every sound. The hum of the air conditioner, someone typing 3 desks away, a conversation in the hall, the flickering fluorescent light you swear no one else notices, and you can't focus because your brain is processing all of it. Meanwhile, your coworker is in the same environment, headphones off, typing away, completely fine. Are they better at focus than you? No. Their brain has a sensory gate that filters out 90% of that information as irrelevant. Your brain's gate is wider. You let in more data, which means you notice more, you feel more, you experience more. But it also means you're more easily overwhelmed. Not because you're weak, because you're processing more inputs than the average nervous system was designed to handle in a modern environment. If you resonated with even one of these scenarios, you're likely an HSP. If you resonated with all of them, you're definitely an HSP. And here's the point I need you to understand. None of this is a flaw. None of this means you're broken, weak, or dysfunctional. What it means is that you've been trying to organize a life that processes 50 inputs using advice designed for someone who processes 10. It's like trying to build a house with tools meant for building a shed. The tools aren't bad. They're just the wrong tools for the job. And that's what the rest of this video is about. Giving you the right tools. The ones designed for the brain you actually have. So let's talk about all the methods you've tried, because I know you've tried them. Bullet journaling, time blocking, getting things done, the Pomodoro technique, morning routines, habit stacking, atomic habits, eat that frog, the Eisenhower matrix, deep work protocols. And I'm willing to bet that each time you tried one of these methods, it worked for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, if you really forced yourself. And then it fell apart. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because every single one of these methods was designed with one assumption, that your brain works like the average brain. And if you're an HSP, that assumption is wrong. Here's what I need you to understand. These methods aren't bad. They work brilliantly for 80% of the population. But for the 15 to 20% with sensory processing sensitivity, these systems create more overwhelm than they solve. And the reason why matters, because once you understand the mechanism of why they fail, you'll stop blaming yourself, and you'll finally see what you actually need instead. Let me walk you through what actually happens when you try these methods. Take bullet journaling. The idea is simple. Rapid logging, future log, monthly log, daily log. Migrate tasks, track habits, reflect. And for many people, this works beautifully. But if you're an HSP, here's what actually happens. You start with enthusiasm. You buy the perfect notebook. You watch 10 YouTube videos on different layouts. You create the most beautiful spreads. And then you sit down to actually you see it. And you realize that every task you write down comes with emotional baggage. Call dentist isn't just a task. It's anxiety about the phone call, guilt that you've put it off, worry about the cost, anticipation of the discomfort. So what should take 30 seconds to write down takes 5 minutes because you're processing the emotional weight. And by the time you've written 5 tasks, you're exhausted. The method didn't fail. You didn't fail. The method just doesn't account for brains that process emotional weight alongside tasks. Or time blocking. Block out your calendar. 9 to 10, emails. 10 to 12, deep work. 12 to 1, lunch. 1 to 3, meetings. Sounds great, right? Except if you're an HSP, your energy doesn't work in neat blocks. You might wake up with high energy and then crash after one meeting because that meeting had interpersonal tension that your brain processed for the entire hour. Now it's 10:30 and you're supposed to do deep work, but your nervous system is depleted. The time block doesn't care. Your calendar doesn't care. But your biology cares. So you push through, produce mediocre work, feel guilty about it, and blame yourself for not being disciplined enough. But the real problem? Time blocking assumes stable energy across time blocks. HSP energy is variable and context-dependent. Wrong tool for your operating system. The Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes of focus, 5 minutes of break. Repeat 4 times, take a longer break. Brilliant for some brains. Terrible for HSPs. Why? Because your brain doesn't shift gears quickly. If you're an HSP and you're finally in deep focus, which took you 20 minutes to get to because your brain needed time to settle, the timer goes off at 25 minutes and tells you to stop. But you can't stop. You're finally in it. So you ignore the timer, work for 90 minutes, and then crash completely. Or you follow the timer, break your flow state every 25 minutes, and never actually get deep work done. Either way, you feel like you're failing at a method that everyone else says is a game changer. You're not failing. The method is failing you. Because it doesn't account for the HSP focus curve, which is slow to start, deep once engaged, depleted after extended periods. So here's what you need to understand. The problem isn't the methods themselves. The problem is they're built on 3 assumptions about your brain that aren't true. Assumption 1. You have a sensory gate that automatically filters out irrelevant information. Your brain's gate is wide open. You let in everything. Assumption 2. You can separate tasks from feelings. Your brain doesn't compartmentalize that way. Every task carries emotional weight. Assumption 3. Your energy is stable across time. Your energy is context-dependent. Social interactions drain you differently than cognitive tasks. Sensory environments affect your capacity. If productivity methods were software, they're all programmed for hardware type A. You have hardware type B, and nobody, not the bullet journal community, not the productivity YouTube channels, not the self-help books, nobody is writing software for hardware type B. That's about to change. But first, you need to see exactly what happens in your brain when you try to just be organized. Because once you understand the neuroscience, everything else will make sense. Here's the real problem, and it's not what you think. The problem isn't that you're disorganized. The problem isn't that you lack willpower. The problem is that organization advice assumes your brain has 3 features that your brain doesn't actually have. Feature 1. A sensory gate that automatically filters out irrelevant information. Your brain's gate is wide open. You let in everything. Feature 2. Emotional compartmentalization that lets you separate tasks from feelings. Your brain doesn't do that. Every task has emotional weight. Feature 3. Stable energy across time. Your brain's energy is context-dependent and socially influenced. So when you try these methods and they fail, here's what's actually happening. You're not failing because you're not trying hard enough. You're failing because the method is asking you to do something your nervous system literally cannot sustain. Let me give you an example. Time blocking asks you to decide at the beginning of the week how you'll spend your time. But if you're an HSP, you can't predict your energy 4 days from now. Because your energy depends on factors you can't control. Did you have a difficult interaction? Did you sleep poorly because your brain was processing yesterday's inputs? Did you absorb stress from a family member? Did the environment overwhelm you? Your typical brain friend doesn't have these variables. Their energy is relatively stable. They can block time and follow through. You can't. Not because you're weak, because your energy is variable. So when you block time and then don't follow through, you feel guilty. You blame yourself. You think, I just need more discipline. But the actual problem is that the method doesn't match your biology. That's not a personal failure. That's a design flaw. And the tragedy is that you've been blaming yourself for design flaws your entire life. Let's talk about what using the wrong system has cost you. Because it's not just about missed deadlines or messy desks. It's deeper than that. Using systems designed for different brains has cost you your self-esteem. Every time a method fails, you internalize it as personal failure. I can't even keep a simple to-do list. I'm not organized enough. I'm not disciplined enough. And over years, those thoughts compound into a core belief. I'm not capable. But that belief is based on false data. You're not incapable. You've just been using incompatible tools. Imagine if we gave left-handed people only right-handed scissors their entire lives and then told them they're bad at cutting. That's what's happening here. The tools were wrong, not you. Then there's the practical cost. How many opportunities have you turned down because you didn't trust yourself to manage the additional load? How many projects have you avoided because you were afraid of getting overwhelmed? How many times have you said no to something you wanted to say yes to because you didn't believe you could keep yourself organized enough to follow through? And here's the painful part. You probably could have handled those things, but not with the systems you were using. You needed different systems. Systems that account for variable energy, systems that manage sensory input, systems that separate your priorities from absorbed priorities. If you'd had those systems, the last 5 years of your life might look completely different. That's not meant to make you feel bad. It's meant to make you feel motivated, because the next 5 years can be different. Starting today, and maybe the biggest cost? It's cost you your identity as someone who can trust themselves. When systems fail over and over, you stop trusting your ability to manage your own life. You become dependent on other people to organize things for you. Or you avoid complexity entirely. You keep your life small and simple because you don't trust yourself with anything more. But here's the truth. You're not incapable of complexity. You're more capable of complexity than most people because your brain sees nuances and connections others miss. You just need systems that work with that ability instead of against it. And when you have those systems, you don't just become organized. You become someone who trusts themselves, someone who can take on challenges, someone who can build the life they actually want instead of the life they think they can manage. That's what's at stake here. Not just clean desks, your relationship with yourself. What I'm about to show you changed my understanding of why I struggled my entire life. Not because I finally found the right productivity hack, but because I finally saw my brain. In 1991, Dr. Elaine Aron began a research project that would span 3 decades. She wanted to understand why 15 to 20% of the population seemed to process the world differently. Not louder, not slower, differently. She called them highly sensitive persons. And over the next 30 years, she would study over 1,500 individuals. She would conduct personality assessments, behavioral studies, and eventually brain scans. What she found confirmed what Carl Jung had observed almost a century before in his clinical practice. Jung documented patients who couldn't function in normal social settings, not because they were anxious, not because they were antisocial, but because they perceived too much. Jung called it differentiated perception, the ability to see through social reality itself. His patients described walking into rooms and instantly knowing everyone's emotional state, feeling tension before anyone spoke, absorbing moods like sponges. Jung didn't have brain scanning technology. He couldn't prove the mechanism, but he documented the pattern across hundreds of cases over 30 years. Fast forward to 2015. Dr. Aron partnered with neuroscientists. They put HSPs into fMRI machines, and for the first time, they could see what Jung had only theorized. They could measure the difference. And what they found was remarkable. The HSP brain isn't just more sensitive, it's structurally different. It processes information through different pathways. It activates different regions. It has measurable differences in gray matter volume in specific areas. This isn't psychological. This isn't, you're too emotional. This is neurology. This is biology. This is as real as being left-handed or having blue eyes. And once you understand these differences, you'll never blame yourself for struggling with organization again. Because you'll see that you've been trying to organize a Ferrari using instructions written for a pickup truck. Both are vehicles. Both get you from A to B, but they require completely different approaches. Let me show you exactly what makes your brain different. Let's start with mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are cells in your brain that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that action. They're the reason you wince when you see someone stub their toe, the reason you smile when you see a baby laugh, the reason you feel tension when you walk into a room where two people just had an argument. Everyone has mirror neurons, but HSPs have more of them. Specifically, fMRI studies show significantly higher activation in two areas: the insula, which processes emotions and bodily sensations, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which handles empathy and emotional regulation. Here's what this means in practical terms. When a typical person walks into a meeting, their mirror neurons fire at baseline levels. They pick up on explicit cues, someone's angry voice, a slammed door, and direct confrontation. When you walk into the same meeting, your mirror neurons fire at 3 to 5 times that intensity. You pick up on micro-expressions, subtle tone shifts, body language, the tension between two people who haven't spoken yet, who's pretending to be fine, who's about to explode. You're not imagining this. Your neurons are literally mirroring more of what you're observing. Stop for a second. Take a deep breath. Notice if your shoulders are tense right now. That tension, that's your mirror neurons processing my intensity in this video. Let them drop. Better? That's the first step of control. Now, this is an evolutionary advantage. In hunter-gatherer societies, having individuals who could read social dynamics this accurately was crucial for group survival. They could sense danger before it manifested. They could mediate conflicts before they escalated. They could identify who was trustworthy and who wasn't. This trait exists in over 100 species precisely because it's adaptive. But here's the problem with modern life. You're not in a tribe of 30 people anymore. You're in an open office with 50 people. You're scrolling past hundreds of faces on social media. You're in meetings with people you barely know, trying to read dynamics and perform simultaneously. Your mirror neurons are firing constantly, processing exponentially more social information than they evolved to handle. So when you come home from work and feel like you've run a marathon, even though you just sat in meetings, that's not weakness. That's your mirror neurons having processed 50 people's emotional states while typical brains process 10. And here's the kicker. To-do lists don't account for this. Time blocking doesn't account for this. When you write "attend meeting" on your calendar, a typical brain interprets that as 1 hour of time. Your brain interprets it as 1 hour of time plus processing 50 emotional data streams, plus managing your own performance anxiety, plus maintaining professional composure while absorbing everyone's stress. That's not the same task. That's 5 tasks masquerading as one. And that's why organization systems built for typical brains don't work for you. They're not measuring the actual cognitive and emotional load you're carrying. The second major difference is in your limbic system. The limbic system is the emotional center of your brain. It includes the amygdala, which processes fear and threat detection, the hippocampus, which handles memory and emotional association, and the hypothalamus, which regulates stress hormones. In HSPs, the entire limbic system is more reactive, not overreactive in the pathological sense. More reactive in the sense that it processes emotional information more deeply and more quickly. Brain scans show that when HSPs are exposed to emotional stimuli, images of faces expressing emotion, sounds of distress, even reading emotional words, their limbic systems light up significantly more than typical brains. This means you feel emotions more intensely, not just your own emotions, other people's emotions. Emotions in movies, books, music, even implied emotions in text messages. Let me give you a concrete example of how this affects organization. You have a task on your list. Call Sarah back. A typical person sees this and thinks, 5-minute phone call? Check. You see this, and your limbic system immediately activates. It pulls up every piece of emotional context. How did Sarah sound last time you talked? Is she going through something difficult? Did you miss her previous call? And is she upset about that? What if she needs something you can't provide? What if the conversation goes long and derails your whole afternoon? What emotional state do you need to be in to handle whatever she might say? All of this happens in seconds. All of this is processed by your limbic system. All of this is invisible to standard productivity advice. So when productivity gurus say, break tasks into small steps or make your to-do list more specific, they don't understand that the specificity isn't the issue. The issue is that every item on your list is connected to an emotional web that your brain automatically processes. You're not just organizing tasks, you're organizing emotional landscapes. And here's what makes this even more complex. Your limbic system doesn't just react to present stimuli. It connects present experiences to past memories with emotional associations. So when you look at your to-do list and see prepare presentation, your limbic system instantly recalls that presentation where you froze, that meeting where someone criticized your work, that time you stayed up all night preparing and still felt unprepared. Every similar experience is activated simultaneously. This is why you can feel overwhelmed by a list that logically shouldn't be overwhelming. Your typical brain friend sees 10 tasks. You see 10 tasks plus 30 associated emotional memories plus 50 potential emotional outcomes. That's not overthinking. That's your limbic system doing what it's designed to do: process emotional information deeply. The problem is that organization systems don't account for emotional processing time. They assume tasks are emotionally neutral. For 80% of people, they mostly are. For you, nothing is emotionally neutral. Everything carries weight. I want you to test this right now. Look away from the screen. Look at one object in your room. Do you just see the object? Or do you feel a memory, a task, or a feeling associated with it? If you felt something, type "I feel it" in the comments. That's your limbic system in action. The third difference is what Dr. Aaron calls depth of processing. This is the tendency to process information more thoroughly before responding or acting. Brain imaging studies show that HSPs have increased activation in regions associated with attention, action planning, and awareness. Specifically, the prefrontal cortex, which handles executive function and decision-making, shows more activity in HSPs when processing even simple stimuli. What this means practically: when you're given information, your brain doesn't just receive it. Your brain analyzes it, compares it to existing knowledge, looks for patterns and connections, considers implications and consequences, evaluates accuracy and reliability, integrates it into your broader worldview. All of this happens automatically. You're not choosing to do this. Your brain is wired to process this deeply. This is why you can't just start things the way productivity advice suggests. Just write the first sentence. Just make the first call. Just begin. Your brain needs to process first. It needs to understand the context, map the territory, see the connections, anticipate the obstacles. Only then can you begin. Let me show you what this looks like with a real example. Your colleague says to you, "Can you look at this report and give me feedback by Friday?" A typical brain processes this as read report, provide feedback, Friday deadline. Got it. Your brain processes this as what kind of feedback are they looking for? High level or detailed? How long is the report? Will I need 2 hours or 6 hours? What's my schedule between now and Friday? Do I have uninterrupted time? What if I find major problems? Do they want honesty or reassurance? What's their emotional state? Are they stressed about this? How will my feedback affect our relationship? What if they disagree with my feedback? Do I have enough expertise to give good feedback? Or will I need to research first? All of these questions arise instantly, not because you're anxious, not because you're overthinking, because your brain is processing deeply. And here's the crucial part. Until your brain has processed these questions, at least to some degree, you can't commit. You can't say yes comfortably. You can't add it to your to-do list without feeling uncertain. This is why you hesitate. This is why you need to think about it. This is why you can't just decide quickly, like productivity advice suggests. Your brain needs processing time. Now, typical productivity advice interprets this as analysis paralysis. They'll tell you, stop overthinking, just make a decision. You can adjust later. But that advice fundamentally misunderstands how your brain works. You're not overthinking in the sense of thinking too much about nothing. You're processing a depth of information that typical brains don't even register. You're seeing variables they don't see, connections they don't make, consequences they don't anticipate. This is a feature, not a bug. This depth of processing is why HSPs often see problems before they manifest. Why you catch details others miss. Why your work, when you finally do it, is thorough and nuanced. The problem isn't the depth of processing. The problem is that organization systems don't allocate time for processing. They assume you can go from input to action instantly. You can't. You need input, process, integrate, then action. That's a 4-step sequence, not 2. The fourth difference is sensory processing. And this is where the name highly sensitive person comes from. HSPs have a more sensitive sensory system, not just emotionally, physically. Your nervous system processes sensory input sights, sounds, smells, textures, temperatures more intensely than typical nervous systems. Research shows that HSPs have a lower threshold for sensory stimulation. What feels like background noise to most people feels like foreground noise to you. Fluorescent lights that others don't notice can give you headaches. Fabrics that feel fine to most people can feel scratchy and intolerable to you. Smells that are barely detectable to others can overwhelm your ability to concentrate. This isn't being picky. This isn't being difficult. This is your nervous system processing more sensory data more intensely. Let me show you how this affects organization and productivity. You sit down at your desk to work through your to-do list. A typical person in the same environment processes maybe 20% of the sensory input. Their brain filters out the hum of the air conditioning, the flicker of the monitor, the faint smell of coffee from the break room, the texture of the chair, the sound of someone typing 3 desks away. Their brain says, these are irrelevant to the task. Filter them out. Your brain doesn't filter the same way. You hear the air conditioning. You notice the monitor flicker. You smell the coffee, and it either helps you focus or distracts you, depending on the scent. You feel the chair, and if it's uncomfortable, part of your attention stays on that discomfort. You hear the typing, and your brain automatically tracks the rhythm, pace, whether it's speeding up or slowing down. All of this is happening simultaneously while you're trying to focus on your task. Now here's the critical insight. Each sensory input requires processing power. If your typical brain colleague is using 80% of their cognitive capacity on the task and 20% on filtered sensory input, they can focus effectively. If you're using 50% of your cognitive capacity on the task and 50% on unfiltered sensory input, you're split. You can't focus as deeply. Not because you lack discipline, because your processing power is divided. And this is why environment matters so much more for HSPs than for typical people. Typical productivity advice says, just find a quiet space. But they don't understand that quiet for you isn't just about decibel level. It's about visual calm, olfactory neutrality, comfortable temperature, proper lighting, comfortable seating, appropriate clothing texture. All of these sensory factors affect your ability to focus. Not because you're sensitive, in the emotional sense, because your nervous system is processing more sensory data. This is why open offices are torture for HSPs. It's not just the noise. It's the visual chaos of people moving. It's the smell of multiple people's lunches. It's the temperature fluctuations. It's the inability to control lighting. It's 50 sensory inputs competing for your attention simultaneously. And when productivity advice tells you to just focus or just eliminate distractions, they're assuming you have the same sensory gate that typical brains have. You don't. Your gate is wider. More gets through. And that's not something you can discipline away. That's neurology. The solution isn't to force yourself to tolerate overwhelming sensory environments. The solution is to design environments that match your sensory processing capacity. And that's exactly what we'll cover in the practical section of this video. But first, you need to understand one more crucial difference in your brain. So let's bring all of this together. You have 1. More mirror neurons that process social and emotional information at 3 to 5 times typical intensity. 2. A more reactive limbic system that attaches emotional weight to everything. 3. A prefrontal cortex that processes information more deeply, looking for patterns, connections, and consequences. 4. A sensory processing system with a wider gate that lets in more environmental stimuli. Now imagine trying to follow a typical to-do list with this brain. Let's take a simple example. Monday 9 a.m., team meeting. Monday 10 a.m., email responses. Monday 11 a.m., project work. A typical brain executes this straightforwardly. Meeting, 1 hour of listening and contributing. Emails, 30 minutes of reading and replying. Project work, focus time on deliverables. Your brain experiences this as meeting, 9-10 am. Mirror neurons processing 10 people's emotional states. Limbic system attaching emotional weight to each agenda item. Prefrontal cortex analyzing not just what's being said, but subtext, power dynamics, who's aligned with whom, potential conflicts. Sensory system managing. Bright conference room lights, the smell of someone's perfume, the cold AC, uncomfortable chair, the sound of the projector fan. You leave that meeting having used 3 hours worth of cognitive energy in 1 hour. Email responses 10 to 10:30 a.m. You're already partially depleted from the meeting, but you sit down to respond to emails. Each email isn't just words. Your limbic system processes. What's the emotional tone? Are they upset? Do they need reassurance? Your depth processing asks, what are the implications of this response? How will this affect the relationship? What if they misinterpret my tone? A 5-minute task becomes 15 minutes because you're processing layers typical brains don't engage with. Project work, 11. You're supposed to start fresh, focused work, but your nervous system is still processing the meeting. Your mirror neurons are still holding residual emotional data from those 10 people. Your limbic system is still activated from the emails. You try to focus, but your sensory system is picking up every sound, every visual change in your environment. What should be 3 hours of deep work becomes 1 hour of fragmented attention. By noon, your typical brain colleague has completed their morning tasks and feels productive. You've done the same activities, but feel exhausted, behind, and guilty for not being productive enough. But here's the truth. You did 5 times the cognitive and emotional labor they did. Your brain processed their explicit tasks, plus 30 emotional data streams, plus 50 sensory inputs, plus deep analysis of implications and consequences. You're not less productive. You're processing more while producing the same output. And this is why time blocking doesn't work, why to-do lists feel overwhelming, why you can't just power through, why you need 3 hours alone after social events, why you can't work in open offices. Why you feel exhausted by activities that shouldn't be exhausting. It's not weakness. It's not lack of discipline. It's neurology. You're trying to run marathon-level processing through systems designed for sprints. You're trying to fit a symphony orchestra's complexity into a three-piece band's rehearsal schedule. The metaphor doesn't matter. The point does. You need systems designed for the brain you have, not the brain productivity gurus think you should have. And that's what the rest of this video provides. A four-step system specifically designed for E.S.P. brains, built on this neuroscience, accounting for mirror neurons, limbic reactivity, depth processing, and sensory sensitivity. Not theory. Practical, step-by-step implementation. Starting 20 minutes from now. But before we get there, I need to show you one more thing. The research that proves this isn't just sensitivity. This is genetic. This is evolutionary. This is as fundamental to who you are as your eye color. In 1996, researchers discovered something remarkable in genetic studies. They found that the serotonin transporter gene, specifically the 5-HTTLPR polymorphism, has two variants, a short allele and a long allele. People with one or two copies of the short allele show significantly higher sensitivity to environmental stimuli, both positive and negative. They process emotions more intensely. They're more affected by stress, but they're also more responsive to positive experiences, therapy, and supportive environments. Dr. Aaron's research showed that about 70% of HSPs have this genetic variant. This isn't a disorder. This isn't a mutation. This is a normal human genetic variation that's been maintained across hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. And it's not just humans. This trait has been identified in over 100 species. Fruit flies have it, birds have it, dogs, cats, horses, primates all have populations that show heightened sensitivity to environmental cues. In every species studied, it's consistently about 15 to 20% of the population. Why would evolution maintain this trait? Because it's adaptive. In any group, you need some individuals who notice threats early, who sense changes in the environment before others, who process information deeply before acting, who can mediate social conflicts by reading emotional undercurrents. In hunter-gatherer tribes, the highly sensitive individuals were the ones who noticed the subtle signs of danger, a broken twig, a distant sound, an animal behaving unusually, the ones who could read social dynamics and prevent conflicts that would fracture the group, the ones who remembered details about seasons, plants, animal behaviors that others overlooked. These individuals increased the tribe's survival rate. The problem is that modern environments are nothing like the environments this trait evolved for. You evolved to process the emotional states of 30 people. Now you're expected to process 50 in an office, plus hundreds on social media, plus strangers in public spaces. You evolved to notice threats in a relatively quiet, natural environment. Now you're bombarded with sirens, notifications, advertisements, fluorescent lights, constant stimulation. You evolved to have time to process information deeply before acting. Now you're expected to respond to emails instantly, make decisions in real time. Just start, without processing time. Your brain isn't defective. Your brain is adapted for an environment that no longer exists. And every piece of productivity advice is designed for brains adapted for modern industrial environments. Fast, efficient, compartmentalized. Your brain is designed for deep, thorough, interconnected. This isn't something therapy can fix. This isn't something meditation can solve. This isn't something you can work on. This is who you are at a fundamental level. But here's the good news. Once you understand this, you can stop trying to change yourself. And you can start building systems that work with your neurology instead of against it. Systems that account for emotional processing. Systems that manage sensory input. systems that allocate time for depth processing, systems that respect your variable energy. That's not accommodation. That's optimization. That's using your brain the way it was designed to be used. And that's what the next 40 minutes will teach you. So here's where we are. You now understand that you're not broken. You're biologically different. You understand the 4 ways your brain processes differently: mirror neurons, limbic reactivity, depth processing, sensory sensitivity. You understand this is genetic and evolutionary. And you understand why typical organization methods fail you. The question now is, what do you do about it? That's next. The E.S.P.B framework: energy, sensory, priority, boundary. 4 steps designed specifically for your brain. Let's build your system. So here's where we are. You now understand that your brain is wired differently. You know why bullet journaling failed, why time blocking crashed, why every morning routine left you more exhausted than energized. You understand the neuroscience, the mirror neurons, the limbic system, the depth of processing that makes your brain process 50 inputs while others process 10. But understanding why you've struggled isn't enough. Because right now, you might be thinking, okay, so my brain is different. Great, but what do I do about it? How do I actually organize my life when every system out there was built for a brain that doesn't work like mine? And maybe you're also thinking, I've tried so many systems. What makes this one different? Why should I believe it'll work when everything else failed? Those are the right questions to ask, because you've been burned before. You've bought the productivity books, downloaded the apps, filled out the planners, and 2 weeks later, you were back to chaos. Not because you didn't try hard enough, but because those systems weren't designed for how your brain actually works. That's the question that matters. And that's exactly what the next 35 minutes will answer. Because here's what I've learned after synthesizing Carl Jung's clinical work, Dr. Elaine Aron's 30 years of HSP research, Dr. Judith Orloff's clinical practice with empaths, and neuroscience studies on sensory processing. There is a system that works for your brain. It's not about forcing yourself to be more disciplined. It's not about toughing up or just pushing through. It's about working with your neurology, not against it. And when you do that, when you stop fighting your wiring and start designing around it, something remarkable happens. Organization stops being this impossible mountain you can never climb. It becomes manageable, natural, even, not effortless. Nothing worth doing is effortless, but sustainable, which is what you've never had before. Think about it. Every system you've tried has told you, here's how successful people organize their lives. Now go do this. And you've tried. You've really tried. But you kept hitting the same wall. The overwhelm, the energy crashes, the guilt when you couldn't maintain the system, the shame when you abandoned yet another planner. But what if the problem was never you? What if the problem was that those systems were fundamentally incompatible with how 15 to 20% of brains work? That's not an excuse. That's biology. And once you understand the biology, you can design around it instead of fighting against it. I'm going to walk you through this system step by step. But first, you need to understand what makes it different from everything else you've tried. Because if you don't understand the design philosophy behind it, you'll fall back into old patterns. You'll try to hack it or speed it up or make it look like everyone else's system. You'll ignore the parts that feel too slow or too simple because you've been conditioned to think that productivity requires complexity and intensity, and it won't work. Not because the system is flawed, but because you'll be using it wrong. So let's talk about what this system actually is and why it succeeds where others fail. The system is called the E.S.P.B framework, E.S.P.B. 4 steps, 4 pillars, specifically designed for highly sensitive brains. E stands for energy audit. S stands for sensory control. P stands for priority filtering. B stands for boundary scripting. Now, before I break these down, I need you to notice something about this framework. Look at what comes first. It's not make a to-do list. It's not set your goals. It's not build better habits. The very first step is energy audit. And that's not an accident. That's the entire philosophy. Every traditional organization system starts with tasks. What needs to get done? How to prioritize? How to schedule? They assume you have stable, predictable energy to execute those tasks. But if you're an HSP, you know that assumption is completely wrong. Your energy isn't stable. It's variable. It depends on how much sensory input you've processed, how many social interactions you've had, how much emotional content you've absorbed from the people around you, whether you've had recovery time, whether the environment is overwhelming your nervous system. Here is what this looks like in real life. A typical brain wakes up Monday morning with, let's say, 10 energy units. They have 10 units Tuesday, 10 units Wednesday, relatively stable. They can plan their week in advance because they know their capacity. They can commit to deep work 9 to 11 a.m. every day because their energy at 9 a.m. is predictable. Your brain? You might wake up Monday with 10 units. You have a productive morning. By evening, you're at 6 units normal depletion. But then Tuesday, you wake up with only 4 units. Why? Because Monday evening, you had an unexpected phone call with a family member who was stressed. You absorbed their anxiety. Your mirror neurons fired intensely for 40 minutes. Your limbic system processed their emotional state as if it were your own. And even though the call ended at 8 p.m., your nervous system was still regulating at midnight. You lost sleep. You wake up depleted. Wednesday, you manage to have alone time. No draining interactions. You recover to 8 units. Better, but not full. Thursday, the office is renovating. There's drilling, voices echoing, visual chaos. Your sensory processing goes into overdrive. By 10 a.m., you're down to 2 units. You haven't even started your work, and you're already exhausted. That's what I mean by variable energy. Your capacity isn't a stable 10 units. It's context-dependent, socially influenced, environmentally reactive, and here's the problem. Every time you try to use a traditional system, block time for deep work, 9 to 11 a.m. every day, you're pretending you have that stable 10 units, but you don't. So when Thursday comes and you only have 2 units, that time block isn't just ineffective, it's torture. You sit there, forcing yourself, producing mediocre work, and then blaming yourself for lacking discipline. You think, Monday, I did great. Why can't I do this today? What's wrong with me? But nothing is wrong with you. The problem was, you were using a system designed for stable energy, when yours is variable. Dr. Aaron's research confirmed this pattern across 1,500 HSP participants over 30 years. She found that HSPs need what she calls recovery architecture, built-in time for nervous system regulation that typical brains don't require. Without it, they hit what neuroscience calls allostatic overload. That's the technical term for your system crashes. You don't just get tired, you shut down. Your brain goes into protective mode. And suddenly, tasks that felt manageable yesterday feel impossible today. This isn't weakness. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it's designed to do, protect you from overload. But traditional productivity systems, they don't acknowledge this. They operate on the assumption that discipline can override biology. It can't. So, the E.S.P.B framework starts with reality. Your reality. Not the reality of the 80% who don't have this trait. We start by assessing your energy honestly, without judgment, without shame, before we even think about tasks. That's step 1, energy audit. Then we move to step 2, sensory control. Because Dr. Aaron's fMRI studies showed that HSPs process sensory information 30% more deeply than average. Sound, light, texture, temperature, visual complexity, you're taking in more data than the typical nervous system can even detect. And all that input, it costs energy. Think of it this way. Imagine your brain is a computer. A typical brain has 100 megabits per second of bandwidth. Yours has 300. You can process more information simultaneously. You notice details others miss. You pick up on subtleties. You make connections between things that seem unrelated. That's your gift. But here's the catch. It also means you hit bandwidth limits faster. If you're in an environment with 100 megabits of input per second, the typical brain is fine. They're processing at capacity, but not overload. You're processing 3 times that amount. You're at 300 megabits of input. You're maxed out. There's no room left for anything else. And when you try to add more, like say, making decisions about your to-do list, you can't. The bandwidth is gone. That's why you feel paralyzed when you're overwhelmed. It's not procrastination, it's not laziness. Your processing capacity is literally full. The solution isn't to stop being so sensitive. You can't change your bandwidth. That's hardware, not software. The solution is to control the inputs. That's sensory control. We're going to design your environment so you're not constantly overwhelmed by inputs and you can't filter. Small changes, lighting, noise, visual clutter, even scent, that free up massive amounts of bandwidth for the things that actually matter. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if I manage my energy and control my sensory input, I'll have more capacity for work. Let's do all the things. Not quite, because here's where step 3 comes in. Priority filtering. HSPs have what researchers call high emotional contagion. Dr. Orloff documented this across 30 years of clinical work with empaths. You don't just observe other people's stress, you absorb it. Their urgency becomes your urgency. Their priorities bleed into yours. For instance, your coworker comes to you Monday morning. I'm so stressed about this presentation on Friday. Can you help? You say yes. Now their Friday deadline is living in your head as if it's your responsibility. You didn't take on the task, but you took on the emotional weight of the task. Your manager mentions, "We really need to improve our social media engagement." It's a passing comment, but your brain hears, urgent, new priority. And suddenly, you're thinking about social media strategy when you should be working on your actual projects. Your friend texts, "I'm having a crisis. Can we talk?" You stop everything. You spend an hour processing their emotions. You absorb their anxiety. And by the time the call ends, you're carrying their emotional burden as if it were your own. And suddenly, you're treating everyone else's emergencies as your own. Your to-do list isn't your priorities anymore. It's everyone else's priorities that you've absorbed. And you wonder why you never get your own work done. But here's the thing. Typical brains don't do this. They hear their co-workers' stress and think, that's their problem. I hope they figure it out. And they move on. Their brain doesn't absorb the urgency. Yours does. So we need a filter. A way to separate. What's actually my priority versus what I've absorbed from others? What truly matters versus what feels urgent because I'm picking up someone else's anxiety? That's priority filtering. A 3-question system that takes 30 seconds but will save you hours, maybe days of wasted energy on tasks that were never yours to begin with. And finally, boundary scripting. This is step 4, and for many HSPs, this is the hardest one. Not because boundaries are complicated, but because of what happens in your body when you try to set them. Jung documented this pattern in his patients a century ago. Dr. Orloff confirmed it in 30 years of clinical practice with empaths. And neuroscience has now shown us the mechanism. HSPs feel others' disappointment viscerally. When you say no to someone, here's what happens in your brain. Your mirror neurons fire as if you are experiencing the disappointment you're causing them. Your insula, the empathy center, lights up. Your limbic system reacts as if you've caused harm, not metaphorical harm. Your body responds as if you've physically hurt someone. That's not manipulation. That's not people-pleasing. That's not codependency. That's your mirror neurons doing exactly what they're wired to do. And it makes setting boundaries incredibly difficult without tools. Because you don't just think they might be upset. You feel their potential upset in your body, like a physical sensation, and your brain does everything it can to avoid causing that sensation. So you say yes when you mean no. You take on responsibilities you don't have capacity for. You sacrifice your own needs to avoid feeling someone else's disappointment. And then you resent them for asking. You resent yourself for saying yes. And the cycle continues. Traditional advice? Just set boundaries. Just say no, as if it's that simple. But they don't understand that for you, saying no isn't just uncomfortable. It's physiologically painful. Your nervous system is screaming at you. Don't do it. You're causing harm. So we need to give you tools. Not vague advice like, be more assertive, but actual scripts, pre-written language that's both kind and clear. Phrases you can use when you need to decline, defer, or delegate without triggering that overwhelming guilt response. Language that lets you set boundaries while still honoring your empathy. That's boundary scripting. And it's the difference between knowing intellectually that you should set boundaries and actually being able to do it in real life. So bringing this all together, 4 steps: energy, sensory, priority, boundary, E.S.P.B. Step 1. Energy audit. Because if you don't know how much capacity you actually have today, you can't make realistic plans. Step 2. Sensory control. Because if your environment is overwhelming your nervous system, you don't have bandwidth for anything else. Step 3. Priority filtering. Because if you can't separate your priorities from absorbed priorities, you'll spend your life serving everyone else's agenda. Step 4. Boundary scripting. Because if you can't protect your energy with clear communication, the first 3 steps won't matter, you'll give it all away anyway. Each step is designed specifically for how HSP brains work, not how typical brains work, not how productivity gurus wish your brain worked, how it actually works. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to go through each one in detail. You'll get worksheets for each step, guided exercises you can do right now, real examples from HSPs who've implemented this system. And you'll walk away with a complete toolkit, not just theory, but practical tools you can use tomorrow morning. But before we dive into the how, you need to understand one more thing about why this framework works when others don't. Here's what makes E.S.P.B different at a fundamental design level. And this is crucial to understand, because if you miss this, you'll try to use this system the way you've used every other system, and you'll get the same results. Traditional systems are built on what I call addition philosophy. They tell you, ADD more habits, ADD more structure, ADD more discipline, ADD morning routines, ADD evening routines, ADD tracking systems, ADD accountability. If your life is chaotic, the solution is to ADD more control mechanisms. It sounds logical, right? You're disorganized, so add organization. You're unproductive, so add productivity hacks. You're overwhelmed, so add weight. Add more things to an already overwhelmed brain. How does that make sense? But that's what every system tells you to do. Bullet journal? You need to set up collections, trackers, habit logs, future logs, monthly logs, daily logs. Time blocking? You need to block out your entire week, account for every hour, build in buffer time, track your actual time usage. Getting things done? You need to capture everything, process weekly, organize into projects, contexts, next actions. Each system asks you to ADD complexity, and for someone with a typical brain, that might work, because they have the bandwidth to manage that complexity. But for an HSP, you're already processing 3 to 5 times more information than the average person. Your system is already near bandwidth capacity. When you add more routines, more tracking, more complexity, you don't get more organized. You get more overwhelmed. The system that's supposed to help you becomes another source of stress. Another thing you're failing at. Another planner you abandon after 2 weeks. E.S.P.B operates on subtraction philosophy. We don't start by asking, what should you add? We start by asking, what can we remove? What inputs can we reduce so you're not constantly in sensory overload? What priorities can we eliminate because they were never yours to begin with? What boundaries can we establish to protect your limited energy from being drained by others' needs? What tasks can we delete, defer, or delegate so you're working with your actual capacity, not the capacity you wish you had? This isn't about building more discipline. It's about removing the obstacles that make discipline necessary in the first place. Think about it like this. If you're trying to run a marathon with a 50-pound backpack, you have 2 options. You can train yourself to be strong enough to carry the backpack, or you can remove the backpack. Traditional systems tell you to get stronger. E.S.P.B says, why are you carrying a backpack in the first place? Let's examine what's in it. Absorbed priorities? Remove. Sensory overload? Remove. Boundary violations? Remove. Now, run. See how much easier it is? So here's your first mindset shift, and you can apply this immediately tomorrow morning before you even get out of bed. When you look at your to-do list, don't ask the question you've been asking your whole life. How do I get all of this done? Ask a different question. Given my energy level today, what can I remove from this list without guilt? Not, what should I do first? Not, how can I be more efficient? But what can I not do? That's subtraction philosophy in action. And it's the foundation of everything we're about to do. Because here's what's going to happen when you start using this system. Your brain is going to resist. It's going to tell you, this feels like I'm doing less. I should be doing more. Everyone else is doing more. This feels lazy. That's not your intuition. That's conditioning. That's every productivity guru you've ever listened to telling you that success requires hustle, grind, discipline, intensity. That's the voice that's been driving you to burnout for years. And you need to learn to ignore it. Because that voice doesn't understand your brain. That voice is designed for the 80% with stable energy and typical sensory processing. You're not in that 80%. So here's what we're going to do in the next 30 minutes. Step 1. Energy audit. I'm going to walk you through a 7-minute exercise that will completely change how you approach your day. You'll learn how to assess your real energy capacity, not the capacity you wish you had, not the capacity you had yesterday, but the capacity you actually have right now, today, in this moment. You'll get a simple 1 to 10 scale with specific descriptors for each level. You'll learn how to identify tasks that create energy versus tasks that deplete energy. And you'll learn how to plan your day around your reality instead of your aspirations. 7 minutes. That's it. And it'll change everything. Then, step 2. Sensory control. We're going to do a 5-sense audit of your environment. I'll show you exactly which inputs are draining you: sound, light, visual clutter, even smell, and how to modify them. We're not talking about major renovations. We're talking about small, specific changes that free up massive amounts of bandwidth. Noise-canceling headphones in one specific situation, a dimmer on your overhead light, clearing 3 objects from your desk. These sound trivial. They're not. For an HSP, sensory control is the difference between having bandwidth for work and being in constant overwhelm. Step 3. Priority filtering. You'll get a 3-question filter that takes 30 seconds to use but will save you hours of wasted energy. 3 questions. Is this my goal or someone else's expectation? Will this drain or energize me? Can I do this without resentment? If you can't answer yes to all 3, it's not your priority. It might be important, it might be urgent, but it's not yours. And we're going to practice using this filter on real scenarios so you internalize it. And step 4, boundary scripts. This is where most HSPs get stuck, so we're going to spend real time here. I'm going to give you 5 pre-written phrases, not vague principles, but actual words you can say for different situations. Family requests, work demands, friend favors, stranger impositions. You'll learn exactly what to say when someone asks for your time and you don't have capacity. Exactly what to say when someone's emergency becomes your responsibility. Exactly what to say without triggering that overwhelming guilt response. And we're going to practice. I'll walk you through role-play scenarios so you hear what these phrases sound like in context. Because knowing intellectually that you should set boundaries is different from actually being able to do it when your mirror neurons are firing and your body is screaming at you to say yes. Each step takes 7 to 10 minutes to learn, 5 to 10 minutes per day to implement. That's it. This isn't a complete life overhaul. This isn't reorganize everything in your life. This is a targeted system with 4 specific practices designed for brains like yours. No complexity, no 50-step processes, no elaborate tracking systems, just 4 practices that actually match how your nervous system works. So let's begin where every HSP system must begin, with the truth about your energy. Not the energy you wish you had, the energy you actually have. Here's where everything changes. Because what I'm about to show you isn't just another productivity hack you add to your already overwhelming list. This is the foundation. And here's why this matters so much. Every organization system you've ever tried, bullet journals, time blocking, morning routines, they all make one fatal assumption, that you wake up with the same amount of energy every single day, that you can just push through when you're depleted. That willpower is the answer. But if you're an HSP, you already know that's not how your nervous system works. Some mornings you wake up and you feel like you could move mountains. Other mornings, you open your eyes and you're already exhausted and you haven't even looked at your to-do list yet. Why? Because your brain spent the entire night processing yesterday's interactions, tomorrow's concerns, and the emotional weight of everything in between. Dr. Elaine Aron's research shows that HSPs use more glucose in their brains during rest than typical individuals. Your brain is literally working harder, even when you're sleeping, which means your energy isn't stable, it's variable. And ignoring that fact is why every just be consistent system has failed you. Think about the last time you had a full to-do list and spent 3 hours staring at it, unable to start. Were you lazy? No. Your energy tank was empty, but the system you were using didn't account for that. It just told you to do the work, and when you couldn't, you blamed yourself. That cycle ends right here, because step 1 isn't about doing more. It's about understanding your energy first, so you can work with your biology, not against it. So what is an energy audit? It's a complete reframe of how you approach your day. Instead of asking, what do I need to do? Which is what every productivity system starts with. You ask, what energy do I have? First. Let me break this down into 3 components. Component 1, your energy capacity scale. In Dr. Judith Orloff's clinical practice with over 10,000 empaths, she developed what she calls the sensory processing load scale. It's a simple 1 to 10 measurement of your available deep work energy on any given day. Not motivation, not how much you should be able to do, but your actual neurological capacity. Here's what this looks like in practice. A level 10 day, you wake up rested. Your nervous system feels regulated. You can handle complex tasks and even some social interaction. On these rare days, yes, you can tackle 3 high-stakes projects. A level 3 day, you woke up from restless sleep. You're already processing anxiety about something that happened last week, and the thought of a single phone call feels like climbing Everest. On this day, trying to force yourself through 3 projects isn't discipline, it's self-destruction. One of Dr. Orloff's patients, let's call her Sarah, an HSP therapist, she tracked her energy for 30 days. She discovered something crucial. She had about 7, level 8 to 10 days per month. 7. The rest ranged from level 3 to level 7. For 20 years, she'd been planning her life as if every day was a level 10. No wonder she felt like she was constantly failing. Once Sarah started planning based on her actual energy capacity, everything changed. On level 3 days, she scheduled one shallow task, answering emails, organizing files, administrative work. On level 9 days, that's when she scheduled client sessions and deep clinical work. Her productivity didn't increase, but her overwhelm dropped by 60%. Component 2. Task energy profiling. Not all tasks cost the same energy, and this is where HSP brains are radically different from typical brains. Think of your energy like a phone battery. But here's the catch. Different apps drain it at different rates. For a typical brain, reply to email might cost 5% battery. For an HSP brain, that same email, if it involves any emotional complexity, can cost 30% battery. Why? Because you're not just reading words, you're processing tone, subtext, potential reactions, how to phrase your response to avoid conflict, what this person might be feeling. That's not one task, that's 10 simultaneous cognitive processes. So component 2 is about labeling every task on your list with its true energy cost: high, medium, or low. And here's the key. You're using your brain's calculation, not some generic productivity experts. Component 3. Energy source versus energy drain. This is the game changer that traditional systems completely miss. Some tasks give you energy back. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but Dr. Aron's research confirms it. HSPs have what she calls charging activities. Tasks that, even though they require effort, actually replenish your nervous system. For some HSPs, that's creative work. For others, it's organizing physical spaces. For others, it's helping one person deeply rather than networking with 20 people shallowly. The specific activity doesn't matter. What matters is that you identify which tasks on your list are energy sources, plus, and which are energy drains. Neuroscience backs this up. When HSPs engage in activities aligned with their deep processing preference, their brain shows increased activity in reward centers. The ventral striatum lights up. You're literally getting a dopamine boost from doing the right kind of work for your brain. But when you force yourself to do work that's misaligned, shallow, rushed, emotionally taxing, without meaning, your amygdala shows stress markers. So the energy audit isn't just about managing depletion. It's about strategic recharging. Okay, let's make this practical. You're going to do a mini energy audit right now. It takes 3 minutes. Grab your phone or a piece of paper. I'm going to give you 3 questions, and I want you to answer them before this video continues. Question 1. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your energy capacity right now? Not how motivated you are, not how much you should be able to do. But if you had to do deep, focused work in the next hour, what's your honest capacity? Write that number down. Question 2. Think about the 3 most important tasks on your to-do list today or tomorrow. For each one, ask yourself, does this task give me energy or does it drain me? Put a plus sign or minus sign next to each one. Question 3. Now here's the key question. Look at your energy capacity number and your task list. If you're at a level 4 and you have 3 energy drain tasks scheduled, what needs to change? Can you move 2 of them? Can you delegate 1? Can you give yourself permission to do 1 task well instead of 3 tasks poorly? That's it. That's your first energy audit. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but what if everything on my list is urgent? What if I don't have the luxury of moving tasks based on energy? Hold that thought, because step 3 is going to show you exactly how to filter what's truly your priority versus what you've absorbed from others. That's where this gets really powerful. But for now, just notice, did doing this 3-minute audit change anything about how you're viewing your day? You'll find the complete energy audit worksheet linked below. It expands on these 3 questions with tracking tools for the next 7 days. Because here's what Sarah discovered, and what thousands of HSPs have discovered. After 1 week of tracking, patterns emerge. You'll see which days are naturally high energy, which activities recharge you, and which tasks are secretly costing you way more than you realized. That awareness alone, before you change a single thing about your schedule, that awareness reduces overwhelm, because you'll stop blaming yourself for not being a productivity machine. You'll start honoring your actual biology. Now, you understand your energy. But there's a second invisible force that's been draining you without you even realizing it, and it's happening right now in whatever room you're sitting in. That's what step 2 is about, taking back control of your sensory environment. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat down to work, felt like you were doing everything right? You had energy, you had time, you had a clear task, and yet you couldn't focus? Your brain felt scattered. You kept getting distracted. Maybe you felt irritable for no clear reason, and you ended the day exhausted, even though you barely got anything done. Here's what was actually happening. Your sensory environment was quietly sabotaging you the entire time. And because you're an HSP, you're experiencing this at a level most people can't even perceive. Let me paint a picture. You're sitting at your desk. There's a fluorescent light above you. Most people don't notice it, but your brain is registering that slight flicker 120 times per second. There's an air conditioner humming. Most people tune it out, but your auditory cortex is processing every fluctuation. Someone 3 desks away is eating something crunchy. Most people ignore it, but your misophonia is activated. And then your computer screen brightness is set to default, which for a typical brain is fine, but for your light-sensitive retinas, it's like staring into a flashlight. None of these things are big deals. Individually, each one is minor. But here's what Dr. Aaron's research revealed. HSPs don't experience sensory input sequentially. You experience it simultaneously and cumulatively. In studies using fMRI, when HSPs are exposed to multiple sensory stimuli at once, their brain shows heightened activity in the insular and the cingulate cortex, the areas responsible for processing all sensory information together. Your brain doesn't filter, it integrates, which means every single sensory input in your environment is competing for your cognitive bandwidth. And this is why, even on high-energy days, you feel drained by noon. It's not the work, it's the environment. Your nervous system has been in low-level overwhelm since the moment you sat down, but you didn't have language for it. You just thought, I'm not focused enough. I need more discipline. No, you need sensory control. And that's what this step is about, designing your environment so it works with your nervous system instead of against it. So what is sensory control? It's not about creating some perfectly silent, sterile bubble. That's not realistic. Instead, it's about understanding your sensory threshold and then designing control zones within your environment spaces, where you can regulate input based on what your nervous system needs. Dr. Aaron calls this optimal stimulation. There's a sweet spot for every HSP where you have enough sensory input to stay engaged, but not so much that you tip into overwhelm. And that sweet spot is different for everyone. For some HSPs, it's a quiet room with soft lighting. For others, it's ambient coffee shop noise with natural light. The key is that you control the variables. Let me break this into 3 practical categories. Category 1. Sensory audit. Know your triggers. Peter Levine, the founder of somatic experiencing therapy, worked with an HSP client, I'll call him David, who couldn't understand why he felt anxious every time he worked from home. They did a sensory audit together. Turns out, David's home office faced a busy street. His conscious mind had tuned out the traffic noise, but his amygdala, the threat detection center, was processing every car, every horn, every siren as a micro-stressor. His body was in constant low-level fight or flight, even though cognitively he felt fine. Once David moved his desk to face the back garden instead of the street, his anxiety dropped 40% in 1 week. Same tasks, same workload, different sensory input. That's the power of this. So the first thing you need to do is a 5-sense audit. Go through each sense, sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, if relevant, and identify what drains you versus what regulates you. Most HSPs have never done this consciously. You just suffer through environments and blame yourself for being too sensitive. Think of your nervous system like a soundboard at a concert. Most people have 5 or 6 sliders they can barely hear. You have 50 sliders, and they're all turned up to max. A sensory audit is you finally learning which sliders to turn down and which ones to adjust for optimal performance. Category 2. The 3-zone system. Once you know your triggers, you design 3 zones in your life. Deep work zone. This is your sanctuary. Minimal sensory input. You control everything. Lighting, sound, temperature, visual clutter. This is where you do your most important work. For some HSPs, this is a specific room. For others, it's a corner of a room with noise-canceling headphones and a specific lighting setup. The point is, no compromises here. This zone is non-negotiable. Collaborative zone. This is where you interact with others' meetings, social work, family time. You can't control everything here, but you can control your entry and exit. You can limit the duration. You can build in transition time, before and after, and you can have sensory recovery tools on hand. And here's something most productivity advice completely ignores. You need transition rituals between zones. Your nervous system can't just switch from deep work to a meeting to family dinner without processing time. That's why you feel frazzled and snappy. By evening, you've been zone hopping without recovery. Recovery zone. This is your sensory reset space. Could be your bedroom, your car, a specific chair, a walking path, somewhere you can go for 5 to 15 minutes to regulate your nervous system. Dr. Orloff recommends every HSP identify at least 2 recovery zones they can access during a normal day. Category 3. Your sensory toolkit. Research from Aaron's lab shows that HSPs who actively use sensory regulation tools report 50% less daily overwhelm compared to HSPs who don't. This isn't about having perfect conditions. It's about having tools you can deploy when conditions aren't perfect. Here's what that looks like practically. For sound, noise-canceling headphones, obviously, but also specific soundscapes. Some HSPs regulate with white noise, others need brown noise or ambient nature sounds. The key is having a sound library you can deploy based on what your system needs in that moment. For light, blue light, filters on screens. This is non-negotiable for HSPs. Dimmable lights in your workspace. If you can't control overhead lighting, a desk lamp you can control. And for many HSPs, natural light exposure in the morning helps regulate your entire circadian rhythm, which affects your sensory threshold all day. For touch, the physical environment. Room temperature control, if possible. Comfortable seating that doesn't create body tension. And this might sound small, but clothing texture matters. If you're spending mental energy being irritated by a scratchy tag or tight waistband, that's cognitive load you don't have available for actual work. For smell, this is underestimated. Scent is the fastest route to nervous system regulation. Some HSPs keep essential oils on hand: lavender for calming, peppermint for alertness. Others can't tolerate any scent. Know what works for your system. The point isn't to implement all of this at once. The point is to build your personal toolkit, so when you feel overwhelm creeping in, you have specific tools to reach for, instead of just pushing through. All right, let's do this together. Your sensory audit starts now. I want you to do a quick 30-second scan of your current environment. Wherever you are right now, look around and ask yourself these 5 questions. 1. What do you hear? Is there a sound right now that's irritating you even slightly? Write it down. 2. What do you see? Is there visual clutter? Is the lighting too bright or too dim? Be honest. 3. How does your body feel in this space? Are you comfortable or are you unconsciously tensing somewhere? 4. Is there a smell you're aware of, pleasant or unpleasant? 5. Overall, does this environment make you feel calm or slightly on edge? Now here's the powerful part. Most HSPs go through their entire day in environments that are subtly triggering their nervous system, and they never consciously realize it. You just internalize it as, "I'm stressed," or "I'm not focused today." But now, you have data. Pick one thing from your audit, just one that you can change in the next 5 minutes. Maybe it's closing a door to reduce noise. Maybe it's adjusting your screen brightness. Maybe it's moving to a different chair. Maybe it's just putting on headphones. Do that one thing right now. I'll wait. That's sensory control in action. One small adjustment, and your nervous system just got a little more regulated. Now, check the description for the full sensory control worksheet. It walks you through a complete audit of your primary spaces, your workspace, your home, your car, and helps you identify your specific triggers and tools. It also includes a sensory emergency kit checklist, 5 items every HSP should have on hand for overwhelm moments. But here's what I want you to understand. Sensory control isn't a one-time setup. Your nervous system's needs change based on your stress level, your sleep, your energy capacity from step 1. Some days, you can handle a busy coffee shop. Other days, even a quiet room with one other person feels like too much. And that's okay. The goal isn't to eliminate all sensory input. The goal is to match your environment to your current capacity. And this connects directly to step 3, because once you have energy awareness and sensory control, the next question becomes, okay, but what do I actually do with this regulated state? How do I decide what's truly important when everything feels urgent? That's where priority filtering comes in. And that's where most HSPs discover they've been living someone else's life instead of their own. Her name is Maria. She's 34 years old, HSP, empath, licensed therapist, and for 10 years, she felt like she was failing at a game everyone else seemed to understand. She had tried everything, every productivity book, every time management system, every morning routine promised by every guru. And for a few weeks, each new system would give her hope. She'd follow the steps, she'd be disciplined, and then, inevitably, it would all fall apart. And Maria would sit there, staring at another abandoned bullet journal, another color-coded planner she couldn't keep up with, wondering, what is wrong with me? But here's what Maria didn't know. Nothing was wrong with her. Everything was wrong with the systems she was trying to use. Let me tell you what happened when Maria found this approach. Week 1. The Energy Audit Revelation. Maria tracked her energy for 7 days using the audit you just learned. And on day 4, she had her first breakthrough. She realized something she'd never consciously acknowledged before. She had exactly 2 high-energy days per week, on average. 2. Tuesday and Saturday, specifically. Every other day ranged from moderate to low. For a decade, Maria had been planning her week as if she had 7 high-energy days. She'd schedule 5 client sessions every single day because that's what successful therapists should do, right? And then she'd beat herself up when she felt depleted by Wednesday. She cried when she told me this, not from sadness, from relief. Because for the first time in 10 years, she had an explanation that wasn't, "You're weak," or "You're not trying hard enough." Her nervous system had been screaming at her, and she'd been interpreting it as personal failure. So Maria restructured. Tuesday, her natural high-energy day, she scheduled 4 challenging clients. The ones who needed deep work, the trauma cases, the complex situations. Saturday, she used for administrative tasks and course development work that energized her. And the other days, she scheduled 2 to 3 clients maximum, sometimes just 1. Her income didn't drop. Her client outcomes improved. And her evening exhaustion, that thing where she'd come home and collapse on the couch, unable to even have a conversation with her partner, that started to fade. Energy audit. Week 1. Life-changing. Week 2. Sensory control. Maria's therapy office was in a shared building. Fluorescent lights. Thin walls. She could hear conversations from the waiting room. For years, she'd thought this was just part of the job. Therapists don't get perfect conditions, right? You just adapt. But after learning about sensory control, Maria did an audit, and she realized she was starting every session already at 60% nervous system capacity because of the environment. The lights were triggering a low-level headache. The sound bleed was making her hypervigilant. The temperature was always too cold. She made 3 changes. 1. She bought a standing lamp with warm, dimmable light and turned off the overhead fluorescence. Cost, $45. 2. She got a white noise machine for outside her door. Cost, $30. 3. She brought a space heater and a soft blanket to keep in the office. Cost, $40. $115 total. And Maria's end-of-day energy levels increased by what she described as 30–40%. Same clients, same workload, different sensory environment. But here's the part that really got her. Her clients noticed. Multiple clients, unprompted, said things like, "Your office feels more calming than it used to," or "I feel like I can open up more in this space." Maria's sensory regulation wasn't just helping her, it was creating a more regulated environment for her clients too. Everyone benefited. That's the thing about sensory control. It's not indulgent, it's foundational. Week 3-4. Priority filtering. This is where it gets deep. Because Maria started using the priority filter you're about to learn in step 3. And she discovered something that shook her. 60% of the tasks on her must-do list weren't actually hers. She was running a therapy practice, but she was also organizing monthly dinners for her extended family because she was the responsible one. Serving on 2 nonprofit boards because she should give back. Mentoring 3 junior therapists for free because saying no felt selfish. Hosting a monthly book club she didn't even enjoy because she'd started it 3 years ago and felt obligated. Every single one of these things came from absorbed priorities, family expectations, professional guilt, people-pleasing, not from Maria's actual goals. When she applied the 3-question filter, is this my goal or someone else's expectation? Will this drain or energize me? Can I do this without resentment? 12 tasks immediately failed. 12. Maria had been trying to organize a life that was 60% not even hers. No wonder every system failed. Over the next month, she told her family she'd attend dinners, but not organize them. Stepped down from 1 nonprofit board immediately, the second after finishing her term. Reduced mentoring to 1 person with clear boundaries. Ended the book club. And 3 members thanked her because they'd also been doing it out of obligation. And here's what Maria said to me. I thought I'd feel guilty. I thought I'd feel selfish. But you know what I actually felt? Free. For the first time since I became an adult, I felt like my life was mine. Priority filtering. That's step 3. Month 3. The transformation. 3 months into using this system, energy audit, sensory control, priority filtering, and boundary scripts, which we'll cover in step 4. Maria sent me a voice message. She was crying again. But this time, it was different. She said, I don't recognize my life. In the best possible way. I wake up, and I don't immediately feel dread about my to-do list. I finish my workday, and I still have energy for my relationship. I say no to things, and the guilt lasts maybe an hour instead of days. I'm seeing fewer clients, but I'm a better therapist. I'm doing less, but I'm accomplishing more of what actually matters. And then she said something I'll never forget. For 10 years, I thought the goal was to become more disciplined so I could fit into normal systems. I was trying to fix myself, but I wasn't broken. I was just using the wrong tools for my brain. And now that I have the right tools, I'm not just organized, I'm alive again. That's what this is about. Not productivity for productivity's sake. Not organization so you can do more. But organization designed for your nervous system so you can finally do what matters without destroying yourself in the process. You're halfway through this system now. You've learned energy audit. You've learned sensory control. And if you've been doing the exercises, you've already started to feel the shift. Maria's transformation took 3 months. Yours might take less. It might take more. But it starts with the same decision she made. I'm going to stop trying to fit into systems designed for brains that aren't mine. I'm going to build a system that fits me. Let's keep going. Here's a question that's going to reveal everything. How many tasks on your current to-do list are actually yours? I don't mean things you have to do. I mean things that reflect your goals, your values, your definition of a meaningful life. Not your family's expectations, not your boss's urgency, not society's definition of success, not the guilt you feel when you imagine disappointing someone. Yours. If you're an HSP, I'm willing to bet that when you look at your list right now, whether it's mental or written, at least half of those items are things you absorbed from other people. And you don't even realize it. Because HSPs don't just empathize with others' emotions. You absorb their priorities as if they're your own. Dr. Judith Orloff calls this emotional contagion. Your mirror neurons are so active that when someone near you feels stress about their deadline, your brain mirrors that stress. And suddenly, their deadline feels like your emergency. When your parent expresses disappointment that you don't call enough, you don't just hear it, you internalize it as a task you're failing at. When a coworker mentions they're overwhelmed, you feel compelled to help, even if you're already at capacity. Research from neuroscientist Tanya Singer shows that people with high empathy scores, which includes most HSPs, have difficulty distinguishing between self-oriented and other-oriented goals when under cognitive load. In simple terms, when you're already overwhelmed, your brain literally can't tell the difference between "I need to do this" and "someone else needs me to do this." This is why every productivity system has failed you. Because they all assume you're organizing your priorities. But if 50–70% of your list is absorbed priorities, you're trying to organize someone else's life while neglecting your own. No system can fix that. And here's the brutal part. You can energy audit perfectly. You can sensory control flawlessly. But if you're spending your regulated, focused time on tasks that aren't even yours, you're just becoming more efficient at living someone else's life. Step 3 is about taking your life back. It's about building what I call emotional sovereignty, the ability to recognize what's yours and what's absorbed, and then making conscious choices about what you actually carry. This isn't selfish, this is survival, because you can't organize a life you don't own. So what is priority filtering for HSPs. It's a three-part system that helps you separate true priorities from absorbed ones, and then gives you permission to release what isn't yours. Let me break this down. Part 1. The 3-question filter. Every task on your list, and I mean every task, needs to pass through 3 questions before it earns space in your life. Question 1. Is this my goal or someone else's expectation of me? Let's get specific. You have Organize Family Reunion on your list. Ask yourself, did I decide I want to do this because it brings me joy or meaning? Or did this land on my plate because I'm the responsible one in the family and everyone just assumes I'll handle it? If it's the latter, that's an absorbed priority. It might be a good thing. It might even be worth doing. But it's not your priority. It's a priority someone else has for you. And here's the key. You can still choose to do it. But you're making a conscious choice, not operating on autopilot, driven by guilt or obligation. Question 2. Will this energize me or drain me? Now, obviously, some tasks are necessary but draining: paying bills, cleaning, administrative work. That's life. But I'm talking about the big things, the commitments, the projects, the relationships. Think of your life like a garden. Some plants give back, they produce fruit, they attract butterflies, they make you smile when you see them. Other plants are invasive. They take nutrients from the soil, they crowd out the good plants, and they require constant maintenance just to keep them from taking over. Most HSPs have gardens that are 70% invasive species, and they're exhausted trying to maintain plants that give nothing back. So, question 2 forces you to be honest. Does this commitment energize me? Or am I maintaining it out of guilt, obligation, or fear of disappointing someone? Question 3. Can I do this without resentment? This is the honesty test, because HSPs are really good at convincing themselves they should do things. You're really good at rationalizing why something is important, even when it's draining you. But your body knows. Your nervous system knows. So, here's the test. Imagine doing this task for the next 6 months. Every week, every month. Do you feel peaceful about that? Or do you feel a knot in your stomach? If there's resentment, even quiet resentment, that task doesn't pass the filter. Because resentment is your nervous system's way of saying, this isn't aligned with who I am. And when you do things out of resentment, if you don't just drain yourself, you also show up with lower quality. Everyone loses. Brené Brown's research on boundaries confirms this. Clear is kind. Unclear is unkind. Saying yes when you mean no, when you can't do it without resentment, isn't noble. It's dishonest. And it creates bitterness in you and confusion in others. Part 2. The priority separation exercise. Once you've run your tasks through the 3 questions, you're going to do something most HSPs have never done. Physically separate your list into 2 columns. Column A, true priorities. These are tasks that passed all 3 questions. These are yours. Column B, absorbed priorities. These are tasks that failed 1 or more questions. These are things you've taken on from others' expectations, guilt, or conditioning. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. For most HSPs, when they first do this exercise, column B is longer than column A, sometimes twice as long. One client, James, a 39-year-old HSP working in corporate, did this exercise and sat in silence for 5 minutes afterward. Then he said, I have 18 things on my list. 13 of them are in column B. I've been trying to organize 13 tasks that aren't even mine. No wonder I feel like I'm drowning. That's the power of this. Visibility, because you can't change what you can't see. Part 3. The release protocol. Now comes the hardest part, deciding what to do with column B. And here's what I need you to understand. You have 4 options, not 2. Most HSPs think it's binary. Either I do it or I don't. But that's not true. You actually have. Option 1. Delete. Some absorbed priorities can simply be released. Not everything requires an explanation. Not everything requires a replacement. Some things you're doing out of pure obligation, and the world will keep turning if you stop. Option 2. Delegate. Some tasks need to get done, but they don't need to be done by you. Can someone else handle this? Can you hire someone? Can you ask for help? HSPs are terrible at delegating because you feel guilty passing your burden to someone else. But here's the reframe. What's a burden for you might be a joy for someone else. Or at minimum, it might be neutral for them while it's destroying you. Option 3. Delay. Some absorbed priorities are real, but they're not urgent. They've just been made urgent by someone else's timeline. Can this wait? Can you do it next quarter instead of this week? Option 4. Do but consciously. Some absorbed priorities you'll choose to keep. Your aging parent needs help. Your child's school needs volunteers. Your friend is going through a crisis. These might not be your priorities in the strictest sense, but they align with your values. So you do them, but now you're making a conscious choice, not operating on guilt, and that shift alone reduces resentment by 80%. The key is, you decide. Not guilt, not obligation, not fear, you. And when you release, delegate, or delay the tasks in column B that don't make the cut, something remarkable happens. Column A finally has room to breathe. Your true priorities, the things that reflect your goals, they finally get the energy and focus they deserve. That's priority filtering. That's emotional sovereignty. All right, time to do this for real. We're going to filter your priorities right now, and it's going to take about 2 minutes. Open your Notes app, grab a piece of paper, whatever works. I want you to make 2 columns, column A and column B. Now, think about the 3 most important commitments in your life right now. Not 3 tasks, 3 commitments. Could be your job, a relationship, a project, a caregiving responsibility, whatever occupies significant time and energy. Write those 3 things in the middle of your page. Now, I'm going to ask you the 3 questions, and I want you to be ruthlessly honest. Don't answer how you should answer. Answer how you actually feel. Question 1. For each commitment, is this my goal or someone else's expectation of me? If it's truly yours, move it to column A. If it's absorbed or externally imposed, move it to column B. Question 2. Will this energize me or drain me over the next 6 months? If it's already in column A and it energizes you, it stays. If it drains you, move it to column B, even if it started in column A. Question 3. Can I do this without resentment? This is the gut check. If there's resentment brewing, even quiet, hidden resentment, it goes to column B. Okay, look at your columns. If you have more in column B than column A, you're not alone. That's most HSPs. And now you know why you've been struggling to get organized. You've been trying to organize a life that's mostly not yours. Here's what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. Pick one item from column B, just one, and decide which of the 4 options applies. Delete, delegate, delay, or do consciously. If you can delete it today. Send that email. Have that conversation. Release it. If you can delegate it, identify who and ask today. If you can delay it, move it to next month or next quarter. If you're going to keep doing it, at least do it consciously. Acknowledge that you're choosing it, not obligated to it. That reframe alone will reduce your resentment. One item, one decision. Today. And here's what's going to happen. When you release, delegate, or delay that one absorbed priority, you're going to feel a mix of guilt and relief. The guilt will last a few hours, or maybe a few days. The relief will last, because you just took the first step toward emotional sovereignty. You just reclaimed one piece of your life and that momentum builds. Maria started with one item. By month 3, she'd reclaimed 60% of her life. It starts with one. There's a complete priority filter worksheet in the description. It walks you through this exercise for every area of your life: work, relationships, family, social commitments, personal projects. It's comprehensive. But you don't need to do all of that right now. You just need to filter 3 commitments and act on 1. Because here's the truth. You can have perfect energy management, perfect sensory control, and still feel overwhelmed if you're managing the wrong priorities. This is the step that determines whether you're organizing your life or someone else's. You just took the first step toward yours. Let me tell you what happens after you do the priority filter. You're going to feel clear. You're going to feel empowered. You're going to look at column B and know exactly what needs to change. And then someone's going to ask you to do one of those things you just decided to release. And every cell in your body is going to want to say yes anyway. Because here's what nobody tells HSPs about boundaries. Knowing you need them is easy. Actually, enforcing them is excruciating. It's not just that you feel guilty when you say no, though you do. It's that your mirror neurons make you feel the other person's disappointment viscerally. You don't just imagine they're upset. You feel they're upset as if it's happening inside your body. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between their emotion and yours. So saying no to someone doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It makes you feel like you're causing them pain. And then you absorb that pain, which means saying no to others often feels like hurting yourself. Dr. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive persons shows that HSPs have heightened activity in brain regions associated with empathy and emotional processing, specifically the insular and anterior cingulate cortex. When you say no to someone and observe their disappointment, your brain processes it almost identically to experiencing disappointment yourself. This isn't being too sensitive. This is neurobiology, which is why every piece of advice you've heard about boundaries, just say no, stop people-pleasing, be more assertive, doesn't work for you. That advice assumes the barrier to boundaries is knowledge or confidence. But for HSPs, the barrier is nervous system overwhelm. Saying no creates a cascade of emotional input that your brain has to process. And if you don't have tools to manage that cascade, you'll default back to saying yes, because yes is the path of least nervous system resistance. This is why Step 4 exists. Because you can filter priorities perfectly. You can know with 100% clarity what's yours and what's absorbed. But if you don't have the actual language, the scripts, the phrases, the specific words to say no when the moment arrives, you'll stay trapped. You'll know what you should do and still be unable to do it. Boundary scripts aren't about being rude or selfish. They're about giving you pre-programmed language so that in the moment when your nervous system is flooded with someone else's disappointment, you don't have to think. You just use the script. And that removes 80% of the cognitive load that makes boundaries so painful for HSPs. This is the step that makes everything else sustainable. So, what are boundary scripts? They're pre-written, emotionally neutral phrases that allow you to say no without triggering massive guilt or absorbing someone else's reaction. Think of them as circuit breakers for your nervous system. They stop the emotional cascade before it overwhelms you. I'm going to give you 5 core scripts. These work in 90% of boundary situations HSPs face, and I'm going to show you exactly when and how to use each one. Script #1. The capacity acknowledgement. I would love to help, but I don't have the capacity right now. That's it. No explanation, no justification, no apology for not having capacity. Your coworker asks you to cover their shift. You would say, I'm not sure. I mean, I have some things going on, but I guess I could try to move them around. What time do you need me? Let me check my calendar. You says, I would love to help, but I don't have the capacity right now. They might push back, but it's only 4 hours. You repeat, I understand, and I don't have the capacity. Here's why this script works. Capacity is objective. It's not about worthiness or willingness. It's about bandwidth. And you're the only person who can assess your bandwidth. No one can argue with your capacity. Script #2, the time by. Let me check my energy and get back to you by specific time. This script is brilliant for HSPs because it gives you processing time. You don't have to answer in the moment when your nervous system is flooded. Think of this like a pressure relief valve. Someone makes a request. Your nervous system floods with their expectation, your guilt, their urgency. If you answer in that state, you're going to say yes, even when you mean no. But if you buy yourself 24 hours, that flood drains. You can assess clearly. The key is the specific time. I'll get back to you by tomorrow morning, or let me think about it, and I'll text you by 6 p.m. Vague promises like, I'll think about it, create more anxiety, because now you have an open loop hanging over you. And when you do get back to them, you can use script #shown or any other script with a regulated nervous system. Script #3, the redirect. That sounds important. Here's someone who might be better suited for this. Name or resource. This script acknowledges their need without making it your responsibility. Your sister asks you to help plan your parents' anniversary party. You already know from step 3 this is an absorbed priority. It's going to drain you, but you also don't want to seem uncaring. Old you says yes, spends 3 weeks stressed, resents everyone involved. New you, that sounds important. Here's what I can do. I can help you find a party planner or an event space, but I don't have capacity to take on the planning myself. Would that help? You're not saying I don't care. You're saying I care, and I can't be the person who does this. Big difference. Script #4, the values-based boundary. I need to honor my limits so I can show up fully where I've committed. This script reframes boundaries as integrity, not selfishness. Because here's what HSPs forget. Every time you say yes to something you can't actually do well, you're being dishonest. You're not being kind, you're being misleading. You're saying yes, but you're going to show up depleted, resentful, doing mediocre work. How is that a gift to anyone? Brené Brown's boundary research shows that people who set clear boundaries are perceived as more trustworthy, not less, because consistency is trust, and you can't be consistent if you're overcommitted. So when someone pushes back on your no, but I really need you, this script reframes it. I understand, and I need to honor my limits so I can show up fully where I've committed. I can't give you my best right now, and you deserve someone's best. You're not rejecting them. You're protecting the quality of your commitments. Script #5, the no explanation, no S. Thank you for thinking of me. This time I need to pass. This is the advanced script, the one that makes HSPs sweat, because there's no explanation, no justification, just a polite decline. And here's why this one is crucial. Every time you over-explain your no, you're inviting negotiation. You're giving the other person footholds to argue with. Oh, but if that's the reason, what if we did it this way instead? Now you're trapped in a negotiation you didn't want to have. In Dr. Judith Orloff's clinical work with empaths, she found that the clients who struggled most with boundaries were the ones who felt they had to justify every no. They thought detailed explanations were kinder, but actually, detailed explanations prolonged the discomfort for both parties and led to more pushback. So this script is direct, kind, and final. Thank you for thinking of me. This time, I need to pass. If they ask why, it's just not the right fit for me right now. If they push harder, you repeat. Script #shown. I don't have the capacity. No is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your energy. Context-specific deployment. Now, which script you use depends on the relationship and the situation. Family. Scripts #2, time by, and #4, Values-based work best because they preserve relationship warmth. Work scripts #own capacity and #3 redirect work best because they're professional and solution-oriented. Friends scripts #2 time by and #5 no explanation work best. True friends will respect boundaries without needing justification. Strangers, acquaintances, script #5 no explanation all day. You don't owe strangers your life story. The key is, you're not making these up in the moment. You've practiced them. They're in your toolkit. So when your nervous system floods, your prefrontal cortex, the part that plans and decides, can just grab the appropriate script and deploy it. No thinking required. That's what makes this sustainable for HSPs. All right, it's practice time. Because reading scripts and using scripts are two completely different things. We're going to role play right now. I want you to think of one specific situation coming up within the next week, where you're probably going to need to set a boundary. Maybe you know someone's going to ask you for something. Maybe you've already said yes to something and you need to back out. Maybe there's a recurring request you need to shut down. Think of that one situation right now. Got it? Okay. Now, which of the 5 scripts fits that situation best? Script #own capacity. If someone's asking you to do something new. Script #2 time by. If you need processing time before answering. Script #3 redirect. If it's something that needs to get done, but not by you. Script #4 values-based. If it's a close relationship and you want to explain your reasoning. Script #5 no explanation. If it's something you just need to decline, period. Pick one. Now, here's what I want you to do. Say the script out loud. Right now. Even if you're alone. Even if it feels awkward. Say it out loud. Because here's what happens when you practice saying it. Your nervous system gets familiar with the words. The first time you say, "I don't have the capacity" out loud, it's going to feel foreign in your mouth. Maybe even rude, even though it's not. But the third time, the fifth time, the 10th time, it starts to feel natural. It becomes available to you in the moment you need it. Okay, how did that feel? Uncomfortable? Good. That's exactly right. Boundaries should feel uncomfortable at first because you're rewiring decades of people-pleasing conditioning. But uncomfortable doesn't mean wrong. It means new. Here's your action step. In the next 48 hours, not next week, not next month, the next 48 hours, use one of these scripts in a real situation. Start small if you need to. Maybe it's declining an optional meeting at work. Maybe it's telling a friend you can't make their event. Maybe it's telling your family you're not available for Sunday dinner this week. One boundary, one script, 48 hours. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to say the words. The other person might be surprised, maybe even disappointed. And you're going to feel a wave of guilt. That guilt might last an hour. It might last a day. But here's what I need you to remember. Guilt is not a signal that you did something wrong. Guilt is just your nervous system adjusting to a new pattern. And on the other side of that guilt, there's something you've maybe never felt before. Relief. The relief of not carrying something that isn't yours. The relief of honoring your actual capacity. The relief of living in integrity with what you said you'd prioritize in step 3. Maria, from the success story earlier, when she set her first boundary using script #4, she cried for 20 minutes afterward from guilt. And then, the next day, she told me, "I feel lighter." I didn't even realize how heavy that commitment was until I put it down. That's what's on the other side of this discomfort. There's a boundary scripts cheat sheet waiting for you in the description. It has all 5 scripts, plus 10 variations for different contexts. Print it out. Put it somewhere you'll see it. Your phone background, your desk, your bathroom mirror. Because in the moment when someone asks you for something and your nervous system floods, you're not going to remember this video. But if you've practiced the scripts and you have the cheat sheet available, you can access them. You've just learned the 4 steps: energy audit, sensory control, priority filter, and boundary scripts. These aren't 4 separate systems. They're one integrated approach. You audit your energy. You control your environment. You filter your priorities. And you protect those priorities with boundaries. That's the E.S.P.B framework, and you now have everything you need to implement it. Okay, let's bring this all together. Because right now, you have 4 separate tools: energy audit, sensory control, priority filtering, and boundary scripts. And tools are great. But what you need is a system, a way to use these 4 tools together so they become your new operating system. That's what the next few minutes are about. Not learning something new, but integrating what you've learned into one cohesive 7-day action plan, so that tomorrow morning, you don't wake up thinking, "That was a great video, but now what?" You wake up with a clear first step, and a second step, and a map for the next week. This is where the transformation becomes real. Here's what the last hour has given you: not just information, transformation. You started this video believing the problem was you, that you lacked discipline, that you were broken. What 30 years of research from Carl Jung to Dr. Elaine Aron to modern neuroscience has confirmed: you're not broken. You're wired differently. Your brain processes information 3 to 5 times deeper than 80% of the population. You have more mirror neurons, a more active limbic system, sensory processing, sensitivity that's biological, not psychological. Every organization method you've tried failed because it was designed for hardware type A. You have hardware type B, so we built you a new operating system, the E.S.P.B framework: energy audit, understanding your actual capacity instead of forcing yourself to meet arbitrary standards; sensory control, taking back your environment so your nervous system can function instead of constantly defending; priority filtering, separating your life from the life you've absorbed from everyone around you; boundary scripts, the exact language to protect what you've reclaimed without guilt, without explanation, without collapse. These aren't productivity hacks. This is a complete redesign of how you organize a life when you process 50 inputs while everyone else processes 10. And when you use these 4 tools together, when they become your system, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself. You stop shrinking your life to fit systems that were never built for you. You stop trying to be someone you're not. You start trusting yourself again. That's not just organization. That's your relationship with yourself restored. Dr. Aron spent 30 years documenting this transformation across 1,500 participants. Jung observed it in his patients. Neuroscience proves it's possible. And now you have the roadmap. So, here's what the next 7 days look like if you actually do this. Not someday. Not when life calms down. Starting tomorrow. Day 1. Energy audit baseline. Tomorrow morning, before you do anything else, complete the energy audit worksheet. It's in the description, 1 PDF. All 4 worksheets compiled. Spend 15 minutes. Map your actual energy, not the energy you wish you had. High energy windows, low energy windows, social battery, sensory threshold. Don't judge what you find, just document it. Jung called this making the unconscious conscious. You're just bringing awareness to what's already true. By the end of day 1, you'll know something you've never known: the truth about your capacity. Day 2 to 3, sensory environment redesign. Now that you know your energy map, audit your environment. Day 2, complete the 5-sense audit. Walk through your workspace, your home, your car. Notice what's draining you: fluorescent lights, open floor plans, notification sounds, visual chaos. Day 3, make 3 changes. Just 3. Dr. Orloff's research shows 3 sensory modifications reduce E.S.P. overwhelm by 40%. Maybe it's noise-canceling headphones. Maybe it's rearranging your desk. away from foot traffic. Maybe it's turning off all non-essential notifications. 3 changes, 2 days. Significant impact. Day 4 to 5. Priority filter, deep dive. This is where it gets uncomfortable. Day 4. Take your current to-do list. Every task, every commitment, every should. Run each one through the 3-question filter. Did I choose this or absorb it? Does this align with my priorities or someone else's urgency? Can I do this without resentment? Identify the top absorbed priorities. Pick one to release. Day 5. Execute the release. Use a boundary script. Pick one situation where you need to say no. Send the text. Make the call. Do it while your nervous system is regulated. Expect the guilt. Welcome it as a sign of growth. Then feel the relief. You now have the roadmap. You have the tools. Energy audit. Sensory control. Priority filter. Boundary scripts. This is your new operating system. Start tomorrow.